Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Categorically Romance podcast. My name is Bree, and as I shared with this author before we hit record, I am fangirling because I love her and her books so much. Author Kaylie Newell is joining me. Kaylie, first and foremost, thank you for joining me today.
Hi, Bree. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and with this being your first time on the podcast, the terrible question, but I have to ask, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I live in Oregon with my family. I have two daughters, a 20-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I'm married to a pretty great guy, and we have dogs galore. And I started writing. Well, I've been writing ever since I was little. My both my parents were writers, so I just grew up wanting to do exactly what they were doing. And but it wasn't until my girls were babies that I started entering contests, and I started doing okay in the contests, and that just kind of made me want to do more and more and more. And then um, my husband was like, "Well, why don't you try writing a book?" Because I'd always wanted to write a book. So I made a goal to try to write a book before I turned 40, and I did. And then the rest is history. So
Wow.
that's
Wow.
me in a nutshell.
I did have some I wanted to talk writing with you, but first let's get into some I have some icebreakers. So,
Yes.
first
Okay.
things that come to mind.
Hmm.
This one I don't want it to be too hard, but what are
Okay.
two of your favorite things? I was going to say 3, but I was like, let's do 2.
That's a
Anything that comes to mind.
anything that comes to mind. I like to eat. I
Same.
love food. That sounds pretty weird, but I just look forward to eating every day. I I just I love to sit down and eat. We went to out to dinner last night. That's one of my favorite things to do with my husband. We got some really good pizza and had some wine, and so that's something I really like to do. The other thing would have to be walking my dogs. I
Mm,
love walking my dogs. It's like such a good way to relax, and I get actually some of my best ideas when I'm walking the dogs. So yeah, those
I
are
love that.
those are things I like to do.
What is your favorite color to wear?
Blue. Yes,
Oh,
blue,
okay.
hands down. I'm wearing blue now. I'm wearing blue sweatpants and blue shoes.
I'm wearing a blue t-shirt and dark blue leggings.
Although we're twinsies.
Yeah, we're twinning. Um, who is one of your most read authors? Like someone, if you look at their bibliography, you're like, "Yep, I've read a lot of them."
These are such good questions.
Well, I had to like jazz it up because I was like, "This is Kaylee
Yeah,
coming on."
Queen Kaylee. Um, um, that's a great question because I love Stephen King. He's my favorite author ever. And I've read most of his stuff, not so much his newer stuff, but his backlist, almost everything I've read. Um, and then Leanne Moriarty, I
Mm.
love her books. I mean, she's a comfort author of mine. Like, I've read some of her books 2 or 3 times, and they just never get old. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Stephen King, I wasn't expecting, but I love that because I'm a horror fan. I don't really read it that much, but I am a horror
Hmm.
movie fan.
Me too.
Book-wise, like, what is your starter pack? If you haven't read Stephen King, read this one first.
Oh, my all-time favorite. Well, it's like picking your favorite child. It's like
Mhm.
so hard to do. Well, you can't do it. But I would say Bag of Bones is one of my all-time favorite Stephen King books because it's just a ghost story. It's just
Oh,
a
I love a
really
ghost
good
story.
ghost story, and it's creepy and scary, but there's with Stephen King, he's just such a good writer. He's a great horror writer, but he's just such a good writer in general that there's kind of romance weaved throughout it and tender moments, and he's just so good. So that's a really really good one. And also The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon is also one of my favorites by him. And that is kind of a different Stephen King book because the horror isn't really, it's not really right in your face. It's it from the perspective of a 9-year-old girl who gets lost in the woods, and she survives in the woods for several days on her own, and it's just her fear of what a little kid would be scared of, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it kind of takes you back to that feeling when you're a little kid, and is there a monster underneath the bed, and if I look, somebody's going to snatch me, kind of thing. um but those are really good books, but I could go on and on about his. I love his writing. So good.
I don't know what it is. I have just never, and some of my favorite movies are like adapted from his books, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't actually read any.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some great movies from his books, but yeah, if I had to tell you to pick one up, if you like horror, Bag of Bones is really, really good. It's scary. I mean, it's
Okay.
like it's one of those books that I don't know if you'd be able to do it at night by yourself. It's pretty scary. But The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon is just, I feel like anybody could read that and not be scared, really. It's just a great book. So, yeah,
Okay.
either one
Well,
of those would be good to start with.
what is a song that has gotten stuck in your head recently?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, Actually, I was just singing last night. This is terrible because I don't know who sings it, but it's the why do birds suddenly
Oh, the
appear? Yeah, the
Carpenters.
Carpenters. Every time you are near.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
such a beautiful song.
yeah, yeah. Because I watched Parenthood a couple nights ago. You know, the old one with Steve Martin.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in there where they're singing that song, and so I actually was singing that yesterday. But I'm proud of myself because I know most of the words, so I can sing it from start to finish. Much to my husband's dismay, I cannot hold a tune. You do not
I
want to
can't
hear me
either.
sing anymore
I
of
can't
that
either.
song.
But yes, I will sing at the top of my lungs. And my husband too is just like, whatever. She's just doing her thing.
Right, right. Let's get the earplugs out. Put them to
Well,
good
I
use.
love hearing romance origin stories. So, can you share with us how you became a romance reader?
Um, well, this is one of my favorite stories to tell. My dad passed away a couple of years ago, and he was I mean, it's cliche to say it, but my dad was my hero. He was just, I looked up to him in every way. And he was a writer, he was a freelance writer. And I remember as a kid, he would get jobs like he would write menus for restaurants and stuff. And that's the first like taste I got of like copywriting, where it's like you look at these little advertisements and it's like, oh, a copywriter wrote that, and he would describe how the pancakes tasted with the butter and stuff on the menu. Anyway, that's what he did. And he decided, he got a wild hair probably when I was in middle school, that he wanted to write a romance for Harlequin. And so he went out and he got all of these category romances. I mean, like a stack of them. And he put them on his desk, and he was going to read all those books for research. And I discovered those books. He didn't know it, and my mom didn't know it. I was probably in like sixth or seventh grade. And I snuck every single one of those books and read them, from cover
I
to
mean, it was for
cover.
research, right? It was
Yes,
for
it was for
research and
research. Right, right. And I was hooked. I mean, I was hooked. I actually remember sitting there thinking, this is what I want to do. I want to do this. And it was for Harlequin specifically. And I thought, I just want to do this so badly. So fast forward, I don't know, 25 years. And then that's when I started, writing and submitting to contests. I never thinking that I would actually be able to write an entire book. And then one thing led to another, and I met some really supportive friends in the writing community, and my family was really supportive. And of course, my mom and dad were, they were like my biggest cheerleaders aside from my husband. And that's what I decided to do. And of course, you like to write what you like to read. And always, always, even with my short stories, all my short stories would have an element of romance in them, like all of them, even the because I like to write paranormal too, and all my paranormal would have romance in them. So that's I just leaned into it, and that's how I started writing romance. So,
Yeah, so I you shared that both of your parents were writers. So it sounds like
mhm.
you don't really know a life without writing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's been a part of my world forever, ever since I can remember. My mom was she was an English teacher. That's how, we paid the bills, and my dad was a freelance writer, but she wrote poetry on the side, and yeah, I grew up in that world.
Bless
So,
your mom's heart. I teach 6th grade English and it's a
oh,
struggle.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Teachers are just incredible beings. So, my hat off to you, seriously.
So having like the sneaking for research, dad I love that dad wanted to write a Harlequin and got all
I
those Harlequins.
know. It
That is
was like
just the
he was a
best.
man before his time. He
He
was
was.
just, I just loved that. And I wish
That's
he had done
incredible.
it because he was very talented. There's no
Yeah.
doubt in my mind that he could have done it. He just kind of, let it pass. But yeah,
Did you know at the time, like, what line was he aspire like, did he wanna write presents or did he wanna write, like, a romance?
I don't know that he ever really nailed down the line, but I know that he wanted to do a category romance,
Oh, I love that
Yeah.
so
So
much.
yeah, I he had all of them, and I read all of them, and I remember just literally I would read them underneath my blanket with a flashlight. It was like so cliche, but that's how I learned about relationships. I was a third kid, and I'm sure, people who are second, third, fourth children can relate. It's like once your third, fourth kid comes along, you kind of forget to, do the birds and bees. My parents never gave me the birds and bees talk ever.
Mhm.
And I learned about sex from those romance books, and I learned about relationships and friendships, and I learned so much from those books. So,
Wow. So
yeah.
once you, decided, like, "This is what I want to do," and having grown up in an environment with writers who sound like they were, obviously you have the support there. What
Mhm.
did you craft-wise, what did you feel like you had to learn?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Especially because you read so much of them,
Yeah,
beforehand.
yeah. Looking back, I learned so much just by doing it.
Yeah.
It's like I love to read, and that was basically my foundation, is just reading so much, and writing the type of things that I read. But there's so much more to writing, as we all know. It's like, you've got to learn all the ins and outs, and I just learned so much by doing it. And honestly,
Just by
those
doing it, yeah.
contests taught me so much about craft.
Mhm.
They probably taught me more than any classes that I took or any books that I read on craft. Although I am leaving out one very important Stephen King book, and that's on writing. And
Mhm.
if you haven't read that one, you definitely should read that one, because it's combination of his childhood and how he came to be a writer, and also advice on craft. And I read that at the very beginning of my writing journey, and that's I still think about that book and the advice that he has in there. So I would say the biggest thing is I just learned by doing it, and
Yeah.
trial and error, and learning what was working and what wasn't working. And then when I first got published, I published with a very small digital publisher called Beachwalk Press. They were so wonderful, and I learned really how to write a book through Beach Walk, through the editing process and the polishing process. And um, looking back, there it kind of makes my head spin because there's so much that I learned throughout those years, you know,
Yeah, I
and
feel
I'm
like
still learning, still.
yeah, I feel like it's probably like a constant work in progress, like you're always learning
Yes.
something. But I pulled up, I was like, what was Kaylee's first book? And it was A Death That Lingers. And I
Yes.
saw Beach Walk Press and I was like, who are they? I'm always
Yeah.
fascinated by all of these like small presses. So like
Yeah.
how did you find them? And like looking back on 2012, like what did it feel like the world of romance publishing that you were entering? Like what did it feel like for you at the time?
Well, that was right when digital publishing was becoming a bigger thing. And it was my big break because I had been submitting my book to Harlequin and the big five publishers, and it just wasn't getting anywhere. It was getting some good feedback in contests, but I wasn't getting it in front of those editors that I and agents that I really wanted it to be in front of. And my critique partner, who was a dear woman, her name was Nola. She passed away a few years ago. I miss her so much, but she was my critique partner, and she submitted to Beach Walk, and she talked me into submitting my book to Beach Walk too, and I did. And I heard back within a few weeks, which in this business is unheard of. It usually takes a lot longer than that. And they said they wanted it, and it was amazing. It was so great, and it was digital only, but it just felt like it felt huge to me, huge. And good old Beach Walk, they stuck around for a long time until finally they you know hung it up a few years ago. But um I have a pretty good backlist with them, so yeah.
The stuff your earlier stuff looks a lot different than
It
what you're
is
writing
very
now.
different. It's so funny how your style kind of evolves. And
Yeah.
um so my publisher at Thule, Jane Porter, who is also one of my heroes, she told me a while back, she gave me the best advice. She was like, you need to have a brand, and you need to have something that your readers can recognize from you. And that's when I started leaning into the small town romance. A lot of it is like cowboy romance. Definite small town romance. And a lot of my stuff, actually most of my stuff now, is sweet, it's closed door. Whereas my stuff from the earlier days was very spicy, and a lot of it had suspense elements or even paranormal elements to it. So it's definitely different than what I started out writing.
Yeah, Miss Jane, I call her Miss Jane P. She knows what she's talking about.
Yeah, she's a very smart lady, very wise. She gives you advice, you need to listen.
So what would you say is like the hallmark of a Kaylee Newell romance now?
Gosh, these are such good questions. I think I just love talking about books. It's so fun. Um, I would say I really like to write about family
Mhm.
and relationships with family and how those correspond with, you know, romance and those kind of relationships. And how they all work together. I like writing little kids into my books. Um, I like writing about animals. Um, I like underdog stories. I think most of my books kind of have an underdog element to them. Um, but yeah, it's interesting looking at this, trying to look from the outside in, but I definitely have a type that I
Mhm.
write.
Well,
So
I have to ask about your Sisters of Christmas Bay series.
yes.
Um, First off, special edition blew my mind with how gorgeous all 3 covers were. When I remember
Oh,
seeing the 2nd book's cover and I was like, "What is
uh-huh.
happening?"
Uh,
But their Sweet Coastal Reunion is, like, one of the books of my heart. Like, I love that
really?
book
Oh,
so much. So,
that makes
can
me so happy.
can you I've been wanting to ask, like, authors the behind the scenes details, like, how'd you come up with the series? Was there any fun behind the scenes thing, like, anything that happened while you were writing it, like, and how you got it published with special edition? So, it's kind of an
Oh,
all over the place question, but really I just wanna
yeah.
know, like, how it came to be, like, how we ended up getting it because I just think that series is so fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And don't they just knock it out of the park with their covers? Their covers are just beautiful. And
Yes.
their covers just they they encompass the stories so well. I'll just start out by saying that. Like they captured the stories perfectly. So in this case, I feel like you can judge a book by its cover, or I hope you can, because I hope the stories live up to the covers because the covers are so great. But
Yes.
the fun thing about the Christmas Bay series is that Christmas Bay, which is a fictional town, is actually based on the inspiration is a real town in Oregon called Bandon. And Bandon is on the coast about 2.5 hours from where I live. And it's just this amazingly beautiful, sweet little coastal town. And so when I wrote about Christmas Bay, Bandon is what I thought about. Um, the storefronts and the beaches and the people and all of it. So that's how it came to be. And I wanted to write a series about an intricate type of family dynamic. And my sister had some experience with fostering children when I was in high school. She's my older sister. And that always, I always came back to that and thinking about what the relationship is with a foster mother with their foster children. And so I ended up writing about a woman who is aging, and um, she's just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she has 3 adult foster daughters who end up coming back to Christmas Bay to help her um, run her candy shop. And that's that's how the whole series came to be. And yeah, I really I do have a soft spot in my heart for Frances. She's the she's the foster mom, but yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
loved the scenes of her, the Alzheimer's part was I don't know, it was just so kinda tough to read because she's
yeah.
just trying to keep on living her life, she's not really thinking about it too much,
Yeah.
but obviously you as the reader know that, like, no, this is
Mhm.
this is going on, but I
Yeah.
just Kyla and Ben had his little girl, and they
Mhm.
had the shop, and she would just come in there. It was just I loved it. I loved it
Oh,
so
I'm
much.
so glad you liked it. Thank you so much.
It was like sometimes I'll read and I'm like, this book just has a vibe. Like it has a whole I need a whole Pinterest board for that particular book. It was just very sweet. Um, I
It
don't know,
makes
and
me
like
feel
fun
so
at the same
good.
time. I don't know. I
Yeah.
loved it. I really loved
Oh,
Kyla
that
and
means
Ben.
so much to me.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
chatting with Susan and I was like, is Kaylee getting any more books? Like, when is the next Kaylee book?
Ah,
Like, if
bless
I'm gonna get
you.
an editor on, I have to ask.
Oh
She's
my
like,
gosh, I
yes.
know. Susan, I worship Susan. I seriously do. And I'm just like, I don't want to be annoying to her, but it's like every now and then I have to kind of gush. I'm like, I'm just so happy to be writing for Harlequin. You don't even know. I'm just so happy. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But it took a while, let me tell you. It took quite a while to get on with Harlequin. It's such a journey. I think for everybody it just is a journey.
Do you remember where you were when you got the call that, like, this series was picked up?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I was sitting in my bedroom writing, and it was an email. Susan had emailed me and she asked me if I had time for a phone call, and I screamed. I
Like, of course I
screamed,
do.
freaked the dogs out. I was just, and this was after right after my dad had passed away, and I felt I can't really describe the overwhelming joy and warmth, and I felt like he was there with me. I not to get too sad or anything, but I just felt like it was just this wonderful gift. And so after I got done screaming, and I had to call my husband, and actually I think I drove down to his work. Is what I did. And then I had to go see my mom and tell her, and I mean, it was this euphoria for days. I can't even describe it. I would say, other than my kids being born and getting married, it was the happiest day of my life, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. You did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You did it, and you did it for dad, like, dad got his chance
Oh, yeah.
through you,
I
right?
do. I feel like, yeah, I do. I feel like it kind of came full circle, and I know that he knows, and it's
Yeah.
very special. It's special every day. It does not, that feeling does not go away. So I feel very fortunate to do what I'm doing.
Well, this March, you are releasing the Mavericks Marriage Deal, which is book
Yes.
3 in Montana
Yes.
Mavericks, the Anniversary Gift miniseries. So, can you tell us what your book is about?
My book is, which I was so excited to have the opportunity to write a Mavericks. I'm telling you, that's another thing I'm going to beg Susan. I'm going to beg her to write another one, because it's just so iconic. But my book is about this couple, Riley and Shep, who they were childhood friends, and they make a pact when they're kids that, hey, if we're not married by the time we're 30, let's marry each other. And of course, romance ensues when they see each other years later at a birthday party. And of course, the sparks fly, and they've always been attracted to each other. But um, they just decide, hey, each of them have been, Shep's been getting pressure from his parents to settle down. And, Riley's, what could be better than pretending to be married to Shep, because she's always kind of loved him. And so they pretend to be married at first, um, or they pretend to be engaged at first, and then they really do fall in love. And so it was so fun to write that story. I loved it.
What was it like creative wise, being part of the continuity and writing book 3? Because I mean, I think any of them can be tough. Like book 1 has you're like the starter. But then there's something about book 3. It's like, I just imagine that being a tough and interesting, like,
It was a learning,
creative-wise spot.
yeah, it was a learning experience. And it, I I really want to do another one, because it's so satisfying to be
Mhm.
part of a series with other authors, especially other authors that you admire, and you get to have your own little part of that. And what they do is they give you the information that you're going to write about, and then you research. And then the characters get to become your own, and you get to make the story your own. But it fits in with everybody else's stories, obviously, just because it's a series. And it was a real learning process for me, but I loved it. I loved it. I loved writing that book.
And I love the premise of it. That's one of my, I feel like, favorite, but I don't see it that often used, like, plots and romances, like, because I used to have a best guy friend, and that was one of our things, like, well, if we're not
Mhm.
married by 30, we'll get married to
Yep.
each other, and then we both ended up married, and
Uh-huh.
I'm always like, but I'm still glad. I'm like, you just that friendship is still always there, but I'm
Yeah.
like, I've totally done that before.
Right. Right. It's like a safety net, a nice
Yeah,
safety net.
yeah. Well, are you working on anything now you can tell us about?
Yeah, I am working on so I have a second Christmas Bay series in the works. So I just finished the edits on the first book and I'm working on writing the second book. So it's a 3-book series. It's called Hearts on Main Street and it's about um, 3 cousins who come back to Christmas Bay for the reading of their grandfather's will, and he ends up leaving them his antique shop to run for a year before he will give them their inheritance. And they all are the inheritance is secondary. They loved him more than anything, but they're all in a position in their lives where they actually really need the help.
Mhm.
So they actually need to do this. They need to run the antique shop together for a year and get that inheritance. And it's all about how they settle back in their hometown and they're all kind of like fish out of water. And the heroine in the first book is she was actually a weekend news anchor in Portland and she was unhappy there and she's just totally, out of her element in Christmas Bay. And so anyway, yeah, I'm working on the second book and then we'll see what happens after that. Actually I know what's going to happen after that series. I signed on um to write another book for Thule, which I'm very excited about. The It's going to
Yay. I
be
love your Thule covers.
thank
I love
you.
those
Me
too.
too. That's going to be the fourth book in the Cole Brothers series that I'm going to write for Thule, and then after that I'll do another proposal for Harlequin and see if they'll have me back. I hope they will.
I hope they will. Susan, if you're listening to
I
this.
know. Susan.
She is. She's just like the coolest person. I totally get it.
I know.
I love this.
Oh,
So it's Hearts on Main Street.
yes.
I love
Yeah.
that so much. I cannot
Yeah.
wait.
Yeah. I'm excited about it. I'm really liking it so far. So,
Well, I have one more question for you. So knowing what you know now, because I feel like we're in a very special position. Like you grew up around writing. So
mhm.
knowing what you know now, like what would you tell Kaylee at the beginning of her writing career, like before 2012 when we finally get the deal? What would you say to her?
Oh, another good question. I would say, and it's the most cliche, I would say don't give up. Just
Mhm.
don't give up. And i- it's hard because you have to have a really thick skin in this business. And I don't naturally. I'm sensitive and I'm a crier and
Me too.
I
Yeah.
I get my feelings hurt, but you have to be able to take the rejection and pick yourself up and move on. And I cannot tell you the amount of times that I had to do that and the amount of times I thought I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to do it. And it's almost like I didn't know how not to do it. Like you
Yeah.
get to a point where it becomes this dream that you can't let go of. And it's like I couldn't not do it. And I feel like that's where Beach Walk was such a blessing for me because I'm not sure if I would have made it if it wasn't for Beach Walk because I wasn't ready for those big publishers. I just wasn't. I had so much more to learn and Beach Walk taught me that. And if I had given up, on because those bigger publishers were like, no, and they were right to say no. They were right to say no. I was not ready. but I would tell that young newbie writer, just keep going, keep
Yeah.
going through it. And I would hope that's what most writers would do. If that's really what they want, just keep going. There's a way to get there. And sometimes it's the long way, and that's okay. That's all right. I
Yeah.
feel like you learn so much more that way. So,
Well, I love that you shared earlier that you kind of set a goal for yourself to like write a book by the time you turn 40. I turned
mhm.
38 in November, and that's kind of a goal that I have. And every time Harlequin posts one of those competitions, like I think the next one is like the Romance
Oh,
Mentors You one, and it's like in May. And I'm like, you got to do this, or another, it's going to be another one that passes. But I
Bree,
just,
you totally should. You really, really should. You should do it. Just do it. The hardest part is deciding that you're going to do it and starting. I
and
promise
starting.
you.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
after that, it just kind of takes over. It just
Yeah.
does. And I would love it if you did. You got to share that story. Got to
I
share that
know.
story with
I
people.
know. Yeah, I and so much of you what you have said, like, resonated with me, like, I have that fear of, like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but you said something
Mhm.
earlier, like, if you when you love reading them, it's a little
Yes.
bit easier than you
It
may think.
honestly, if you are a reader, you would be surprised. It comes a lot more naturally than you think it will. It really, really does, because that those years and years and years of reading books, it just kind of comes out.
Yeah,
And yeah, I am sending you so many good vibes, and I will be crossing fingers, and I really hope that you do. I really,
thank
really
you.
do.
I'm determined. I was like, "You cannot let another one pass you by." So
No. And those are such good opportunities. They
yeah.
are. They're gold, really. So,
Where can everyone keep up with you online?
um, I am on Facebook, my Facebook author page. I try to post every day, and so that's the best pay. That's the best way to contact me and keep up with what I'm doing. I can't promise that it'll be the most exciting information, but I do try to post, pictures of dog walks and what I'm working on writing wise and that kind of thing. So, and I love to talk to my readers, so if anybody wants to follow me there, I'd be thrilled.
Well, thank you for chatting with me today. Will you come back? You have to come back.
I would love to come back. I have to tell you, I was so nervous. I hope I didn't talk your ear
No,
off.
you were great. I have a podcast. That's what I need.
Oh, I just love podcasts. I'm
Thanks.
I'm very honored that you had me on, and thank you so much.